Though Molly had perhaps stretched the truth about her domestic prowess, she was determined to make good on the claim. She spent the first week at Windsor Manor scrubbing, scouring, and dusting every surface she could find. By the end of the week, Molly had succeeded in her efforts, as evidenced by not one, but 3 separate instances of her mistress uttering "thank you" after being served.
We were expecting you hours ago. Have you any news?
Forgive me, darling. I was a bit late getting out of town. It didn't help that the roads had turned to marsh since Monday. I dare say at this rate, the whole valley will be a bog by Easter.
And your meetings, were they productive?
Oh, heavens, how my 2 children have changed.
I'm Molly, and this is my brother Kip. Alistair and Penny are upstairs getting ready for supper.
Where'd the help?
I've nearly got food on the table, sir.
Ah, victuals. There's nothing I prefer to a hot meal at the end of a long ride. Well, perhaps a hot meal at the end of a short ride after you, my dear.
He seems friendly.
Friendly like a housefly. I'd have shook his hand if I didn't think it'd frighten him to death. It's a mixed-up world where he's the one being called master.
The evening menu was mostly burned pork roast with a side of mostly bland vegetables, the best Molly could do in light of all the extra housework. Penny spent the bulk of her mealtime trying to see how many individual peas she could spear onto her fork tongs. Alistair busied himself smuggling what looked to be peppermints from his pocket into his mouth without his parents noticing. Constance seemed more interested in her wineglass than her plate, and Bertrand Windsor was too busy talking to eat much of anything.
Ah, your native cuisine.
Bertrand appeared to be the sort of guy for whom silence was uncomfortable, and he made his mission to furnish the meal with conversation mostly by telling jokes he had learned in town.
The one gentleman says to the other, "My wife's always after me for money. When I wake up, she says, 'Give me £5.' And then when I come home at night, it's the same thing, 'Give me £5.' The other fellow asks what she does with all her money, and the first one says, 'I don't know, I haven't given her any.'"
I like Molly's stories better.
I found it very funny, sir.
I would like to hear a little more about the men from the bank, darling. Do they seem receptive?
Ah, that reminds me. I overheard the most amusing story about 2 bankers trapped in a nunnery. How does it go? Let me see.
Let us not.
Indigestion, perhaps.
Molly quietly walked to the sideboard at the far end of the hall and began watering some wildflowers Kip had brought in from the woods. Beside her was the drawing room, and through the gap where the door hinged, she could see the Windsors close to each other, deep in conversation.
When I tell you that I want nothing to do with this house, you ignore me. And what do you send me? A pair of children, Bertie. I just feel that I'm not part of this marriage.
Well, they are working for free. That's something. Please trust me. This will work, but it will take time.
You told me there was no time.
You're right, but there is, of course, a way to buy time.
Master Windsor held out his hand. Constance stiffened. Molly leaned close to the jamb, trying to read the expression on Constance's face. Constance sighed and removed something from her dress pocket. Bertrand snatched the object, which was long and seemed to be made of metal, from her grasp. Bertrand clutched it in his fingers like a treasure. He turned around and marched into the hallway. Molly pressed herself against the wall, hoping the half-open door might hide her. He walked right past her, and she caught a glimpse of the object gripped in his pale hand. It was a key.